Is all about polls, and more polls. Here with us, Angela Ambitho. She's the founder, CEO of Infotrak. And right on the far end, Samuel Mudhoka. He's Director of Public Affairs at Ipsos. By the way, Ipsos has not conducted a poll since 2017, a political poll, but they do polls all the time. Infotrak just did one, released just this month. So they're up to date. And Angela, tell me, what exactly was this poll about?
Jeff, it was a very simple poll because we did the poll just after, the campaign period was officially launched. And so obviously we wanted to find out, what the preferences were with regards to presidential, candidates. Because at that point as well, they'd become candidates. Before that, they were all aspirants. Right. Before IEBC ratifies them, they're aspirants. And then IEBC gives the window. And whilst in Kenya, we start campaigning very early, it's only a specific window where officially campaigns are on. So that's why we conducted a poll. One, to find out what the intention of voting would be. So, because voter turnout is very critical in estimating, what kind of results we would get in terms of election outcomes. And then secondly, to understand who is preferred, because that's the hot news right now. Yeah.
Tell me something, Samuel, and you guys haven't conducted a poll, but you're going to do one before August, right? Ipsos is going to do one. We have an intention, we have a plan to do one. Mm-hmm. And of course, we are guided by, a set protocol about opinion polling, because it's a very established practice, in the Ipsos world. And one of the things that is guiding us towards that, we know that voter preferences is a changing variable. So until that time that we could say it's not constant, at that point we would want to do a poll. But between now and then, there could be events and activities that could change intentions in one way or another. And we are taking care of that so that by the time that we release a poll, we would want it to be predictive. Yeah. Angela, tell me something. How accurate are the polls you conduct?
A poll, Jeff, is a snapshot at that point in time. And Sam here should be telling us the truth, that the reason why they don't want to conduct polls is because of the flack.
That they get.
The flack is crazy. And so, yes. Because Ipsos does not want the flack that they received last time, they want to limit themselves to a specific window. And I'll tell you why. It's what billion-shilling industry right now? What does our association say? It's about
500 billion. That's globally.
Yes. But for Kenya?
No, for Kenya is much less than that. Could be about $1 billion.
$1 billion.
Shilling industry.
$1 billion shilling industry. We're not many players. And only polling, Jeff, only but constitutes 0.0 something of our business. So the reason why you don't see the 12 to 13 odd members of the Market Research Association doing polling is because of the risk. So when you do your risk assessment and you sit with your board, like probably Ipsos did, you ask yourself, is it worth the headache? Because 99% of your revenue is not earned from polling, which comes only during a specific window. And we're only 13 to 14, core, but still an oligopoly because we have only but I think 5 to 6 main research agencies, correct? International right. And local.
Okay, humor me. What's the core work then?
Our core work is to work with Citizen and to tell Citizen, are you the most? I don't know. That sounds core business, man.
I think the research business in Kenya literally could be much, much bigger, in the extent of 3 billion. The industry.
Right.
And of course, you have every other corporate who wants to understand their businesses and quite a number of things. We have the media. We have the social and, the development sector, which is large, the corporate sector. And there is a lot of business in that kind of a sense. And opinion polling, by design, I think it is many companies have been understood to be just pollsters at the expense of so much other things that they do. So deliberately. So sometimes strategically you want to focus, because we are businesses. We are out there to make value for our shareholders. So you rationalize exactly what it is that you want to do and do it effectively.
Yeah.
Actually, what we do is, I was just starting off because obviously media research is one of the core areas that we cover. But there are things that the research is divided into two. There's market and consumer research that looks at consumer behavior patterns. Who is drinking what? Whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage, who's consuming what? Then there is, of course, there's also the service sector. So, why would you go to a specific restaurant, hospital, bank, use a specific mobile provider as opposed to another? That's where the business is. Then there's social research. Social research looks at all the problems that afflict our society today. So, for instance, Sam, myself, and other research agencies work with the UN agencies, all these international organizations to deal with health, so malaria, TB, COVID, etc., to understand how people, view this kind of diseases. And then we also have governance and social governance and political-based research, where, opinion polling is just but a small facet. So there are many other things we do in the governance realm. Last week, we launched a poll with Kenya National Human Rights Commission on the death penalty. Had nothing to do with of course, we have one presidential candidate who has touched on what would happen if...
Yeah, and by the way, his approval rating has gone up to 7%.
Where?
One of the polls. I guess it was your competition.
You see, this is why you need to put things in context, Jeff. Is it 7% nationally, or is it 7% in a ward?
Region? No, it wasn't in a ward.
No, but this is it. So if it is Nairobi, then we must confine it to Nairobi, which only constitute a specific percentage of overall, national voter population. It would be interesting to see what those numbers will be when we all run our polls, but certainly I would not be surprised that the numbers of specific candidates, now that we only have 4, are they still 4? The 2 main ones and the 2 others who were ratified by and cleared by IEBC, it would not surprise anyone that their numbers would go up.
What is the usual margin of error, Samuel, in your polls?
So let me give you a little background and then put this into perspective. And it is very important that Kenyans understand that this is science. Our opinion polling is as old as from 1824. That's 200 years back. It has been happening. And opinion polling is all about going to a population and selecting a representative sample. Now, when we talk about representativity as part of research, what is that sample that can represent the population? And that is where we bring the margin of error. Why do we talk about a sample? I normally use an analogy which is very, very interesting. When we want to know that you have malaria, Jeff, we only take 1 drop of your blood. We don't drain the whole 5 liters of blood from you. And from that 1 drop, we can test and find that you have malaria. And remember that 1 drop has red blood cells, white blood cells, all of those things. So in a population survey, you go and select a subset of that population which exhibits the characteristics of the population. And every time you select that, because we are guided by the rules of science, acceptable margin, there are different margins of error, but in a Kenya population, our population right now, the eligible population that votes is about 21 million. 21 million, you can represent them with a sample of 1,000 plus, depending on the margins of error. But now a sample of 2,500 has a margin of error of plus minus 2.2. Plus minus 2.2. That is an acceptable range. The more you increase the sample, the more you reduce the margin of error. So, for example, a sample of 10,000 could have a margin of error of something like 0.7% plus minus, but it may not necessarily give you a lot of different results from a 2,500 or even 5,000 sample. So it doesn't matter, the more and more we increase the sample, the margin of error doesn't get to zero because it goes on a line up to infinity. It will never get to zero. And it is important to understand that. So what sample can represent the Kenyan population? Even with good sampling, following the rules of science, even a sample of 1,000 can represent a subset of the population that you want to measure and understand.
And Angela, why is there always contestation when the opinion polls come out? Why is that? Is that human nature or what is it?
Well, yes, because we see the skepticism not just in Kenya, we see it everywhere. If any of us were, closely watching the UK and US elections, the skepticism, unfortunately, on pollsters is there, because when we're doing public opinion polls on popularity, the spotlight is being placed on the persona, someone's persona. And that is hard to take. You are saying that this person who's trying to endear themselves to the general population, which in this case is voters, after doing all the work they've done from a representative sample that, a sample that represents, say, a voter population, is only getting 2%. Now, this person has two options. They have the option of appreciating that polling is a science and saying it is what it is. Or they have the option of doing what any human being who's fighting to win an election would do. And so we never take it personally and say it's complete BS. It's rubbish. How can 1,000 people that Sam has talked about represent 22 million voters? It is nonsense. And if you look at it from the perspective without understanding the science, then it sounds preposterous. So I think one of the things that we know ourselves as pollsters, that we have our work cut out for us in terms of working with the media, and it's the only way to do it anywhere in the world, to educate the populace. So that when the politicians stand on podiums, as they've done in the past, and say, look at the massive audience here. Ona hii umati. Watu wote. All these people who have come here. And some bloody pollster has the audacity to say that I don't have numbers, I can only command 1%. Of course they're fraudsters.
Kwa ground, vitu ni different.
Kwa ground hapa, tunaona, things are very different. Yeah. But of course, those are the people that we know, and we know how. I've just come from the field. I came from the field last night. And we know what happens when, the political period is on, and how different ways are used to get people to go to those particular, rallies. So some people there may be people that are espousing to what you're trying to sell, but there are many others who are coming for handouts.
That's it. You're Kitu too.
Yeah.
Sam, you want to add something?
Of course, it gets very interesting when you hear, a politician or whoever is standing on the podium and asking, who has been talked to? Have they talked to any of you? And then everybody is, we have never seen them, we've never talked to them. Right. And Jeff, because this is science, it boils back to science. We want to talk to 2,500 Kenyans at any given instance, for example. And each and everyone has an equal chance of being selected, depending on the methodology that we use and the limitations which we set very clearly. So what is the likelihood that you will be interviewed in that kind of a situation? This is simple science. This is probability. Out of 22 million, we only want 2,500. The likelihood, Jeff, that we will talk to you is once in 42 years.
Wow.
Simple science, simple mathematics.
Once in 42 years.
Once in 42 years. So anybody we meet and they ask us, who did you talk to?
Yeah.
We talk to people. We get opinions of Kenyans. Kenyans are so willing to give that opinion. In fact, they run to you. They want to give that opinion. They want to be interviewed. We hardly meet resistance.
But what criteria do you use, Samuel? I mean, just
Fine. This is science. So, for example, we set up, the methodology is always very, very clear. Yeah. We set up a sample based on what we call population proportionate sampling. So, for example, if Nairobi has 10% of the voter population, our sample for Nairobi will only be 10%. And we do that for all the regions where we spread our sample. Now, once we spread that sample, when we go to the ground, we have what we call enumeration areas. All enumeration areas in this country are designated by the National Bureau of Statistics. All. Not even one single location is not designated. So the moment we get into designated enumeration area, and we know the specific sample that we need to get from that, there are rules of science. Where do you start? There is what we call, the right-hand rule. You move several households from a central location, and then you start interviewing. When you get into a household, you list all eligible participants, because remember, each one of them has an equal chance of participating. And we list them in what we call a quiche grid. Remember, we are doing this on our technology platforms.
Right.
And then the mechanism will just raffle and select that one person that you will interview. What if that person is not there? Because we only interview people who are members of a household, within a household. And you'll find that most of the surveys that are done at household level, we don't do street intercepts. And then we take cognizance of the fact that people could be away from home because they are working or doing other activities. So you will extend the interviewing period so that it captures both normal day, weekends, evenings, or times that people can be at home, so that every person is given an equal chance of being intercepted at the household.
By the way,
and interviewed.
I don't know anyone who's ever been polled.
Are you serious?
I don't know.
Well, how old will you be 42 years from now? You have 42 years, but you will. You see, there are a couple of things. Right now we're 3 odd reliable pollsters. The more pollsters we have,
the more the chance.
The higher your likelihood of being interviewed.
Yeah.
So, and the frequency as well. If we are only doing one poll a month, then the frequency and probability reduces. But as Sam has mentioned, it is a matter of probability and frequency. If every pollster, assuming you had 20 pollsters, each one of them doing 4 polls or 5 polls a month, your likelihood would reduce from 42 years, Jeff. We will reach you.
Yeah.
We'll ask you, who are you going to vote for as your MP and ward rep?
Yes.
Who is your MCA, first of all?
Correct.
Do you know your MCA's name right now?
I do indeed. But let me ask you this before I answer your question. We all know this. He who pays the piper calls the tune.
Correct.
So if someone commissions a poll,
Yes.
you're going to be biased.
No. He who pays the piper calls the tune, but the tune that we professional researchers adhere to is a strict protocol that follows the science. So we said it's 1 billion shilling or more industry. Every one of those, including Citizen, pays us to do research. Now, when we come back to you, we will tell you the truth as to whether JKLive is popular or not. Yeah. But you've paid us.
Correct.
Correct?
Yeah.
Because you want to get this information so you can improve your product.
The same with politicians?
Same thing. It's the same thing. And many of them, Sam will tell you, receive the results very professionally in the boardroom.
Is that true, Sam?
Jeff, you would be shocked the number of politicians who commission opinion polls, sit in strategy sessions, use that data, and probably go out there and deny everything in the public sector.
But let me wonder, is this the same person?
But let me say this for the record, that opinion polling is not cheap. It's not a cheap business, really. And when you see an opinion poll that is released publicly, most of the times you find that we only have like 4 or 5 questions that we own. We have the copyright, we own them, but there are mechanisms and the vehicles that we have that almost every other research organization runs that are capable to pull in resources. So Citizen, you have 5 questions. Somebody else has their 10 questions or 3 questions, and then we pull up these resources, and then I'm able to plug in my 5 questions there. And the issue about funding will never arise because I'll give you your data, it's private, we will not discuss it with anybody else. I'll do the same to all my other clients, but my 5 questions which I own, I'll go ahead and publish.
Right.
I think it's imperative to make the viewers understand. There's paid for research, there's commissioned research that belongs to, and that is customized research, which sometimes can cost up to the tune of 20 million, 30 million.
Expensive.
It's expensive. But that data belongs to the client. And you sign non-disclosures, and the proprietariness and ownership is the client, the person who paid, whether it's good news or bad news. And it's not often going to be good news. Because why do you do research? You do research because you're feeling a pain, or your hunch is telling you something needs to change. So then you go to the research institution or agency, and they will then understand. This is why we call it the research what? The research problem. Our business is to understand the research problem. And then we generate hypotheses. And the hypothesis once generated is JKLive show not popular? And then we have to, confirm whether that is the case or not.
Because of numbers, literally, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Or is a specific drink not being consumed as much now as it was before? Once you've confirmed that, then you go through the steps. Why? Who has stopped? Where have they gone? It is the same principle with politics. Are you popular? Not as much as you think. So whilst you think that you're good looking or you're entertaining, when we talk to respondents who are voters and they tell us, no, we don't think so, we just come back and tell you, you're only endearing yourself to 2% of the population or 1% of the population. And that 1% is here. The rest of these guys are going elsewhere, or they are with nobody.
Okay, before we take a break, real quick, and you don't have to answer this, but how does Sakaja remain so popular in Nairobi? He's at like 40%, despite the degree controversy. How do you explain that? You want to think about that while we take a break?
Absolutely. Your guess is as good as ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wajakoya at 7%? But like you said, it's probably in Nairobi only. It's not nationally.
No. I mean, he said on your show that he would arrest. I don't know about you. You'd arrest me and have me. So I don't want to say
You're not going to touch that one.
It could be the whole country, but it still would be 7%. 7% will not take you to State House.
No.
No?
No. Absolutely. Wow. Angela Mbitho, founder, CEO, Infotrak, and Samuel Mudoka, Director of Public Affairs at Ipsos. We're talking numbers. We're talking science, you said, huh? 200 years of science. And the numbers don't lie. Let's face it. Keep tweeting at Koinange Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya, the hashtag JKLive. JKLive takes a break. We'll be back in a moment.